Hey, good morning, everybody. Um, so today is 10 years since I robbed the Walgreens in St. Petersburg at 9th Street and 54th Avenue North. Um, 10 years, a lot's changed. But, I'm sure anybody who was aware of what was happening that day still has some either trauma from it or at least some memories they don't want to have. And I want to apologize for that. I want to apologize to those I let down. And that will always be the case, especially on this day every year. What got me started in opioids, which was why I robbed the pharmacy, was one day I had a small time Vicodin habit. When I'd see the dentist, I'd get a few extra, just for kicks. And one day I hurt my back and I had nothing, and my buddy had these little blue pills. He didn't really know what they were exactly. He just knew they were called roxicodone. And he gave me started giving me a half of one. And he's like, wait a minute, let me break that in half. He gives me this little tiny speck of a pill, and I'm like, what's that going to do? But, within 30 minutes, I was throwing up and I was hooked. It was several weeks before I even thought to look up the pills on Google or something. And once I did, I found out that it was oxycodone. And, basically synthetic heroin. So at that point I was like, damn, what did I get into? I should stop. Well, I was already hooked, so stopping wasn't exactly an option. Obviously where it led was to pain management, which led to way more pills than I needed, which of course eventually escalated to the point where I was taking more than what I was being prescribed. I was buying them off the street. And as you know, it led me into a situation where I wasn't able to take my psych meds, being dope sick. So I ended up having a psychotic episode on top of being dope sick and robbing the pharmacy. It took me to a place I'd never been before. It took me outside my moral beliefs and my upbringing, and it's just, these painkillers are evil in a way, because they seduce you into a habit that does not sustain itself. It's a habit that keeps building upon itself. It took me to jail and prison. Somebody who's never been in trouble as an adult. I had some stuff I got mixed up in as a kid with my friends, but that's it. So for somebody to step completely outside their morals and put a gun in somebody's face, that should give you an idea of just how serious these pills are. Literally, when you're dope sick, you feel like you're dying. And it's just so bad, you want relief no matter, and you just about do it any way you could. And apparently with a psychotic episode, you will do it any way you could. What got me through it is that I realized, even in my psychotic episode, that this was 2 days before my dad's birthday. My dad, who had been dead for 8 years. And my dad always wanted me clean. So I looked at it kind of like him and God got together and found a way to get me clean. But, some of you are probably saying, well, God wouldn't tell you to rob a pharmacy. You don't know God very well. He uses whatever medium necessary in order to get his message across. And saving people does not necessarily mean a rescue. Sometimes it means putting them in positions where they're going to do something that takes them away from the situation, and that saves them. In this case, that's what happened. I ended up with a gun that was stolen, didn't buy any bullets for it, robbed a pharmacy, and ended up off the pills because of it. So if you don't want to call that a rescue, I don't know what to say. And if you don't want to say that's God, let me add to that. During the first 16 months I was in jail, the first 14 months, excuse me, I was in a psychotic episode. I mean, like constantly. It didn't go away at all. I was hearing voices, I was seeing people that weren't there, I was imagining things that, it's just the whole 9 yards of a schizophrenic episode, psychotic episode, for 14 months. At 10 months or 11 months, I got sent to the state hospital, declared incompetent when the judge figured out what was going on. And I spent 4 months in observation at the state hospital before they decided what kind of course of action to take. And that course of action was to get me back on an antipsychotic, because the whole time I was in jail I wasn't taking one. Within 2 months the symptoms got better. The hearing things went away, the seeing things went away, and I was a bit less paranoid, quite a bit less delusional, and more functional. So then I transferred back to the jail to be sentenced, to be tried and sentenced. Well, of course, I was offered the chance when I got back to plead out. The situation when I got locked up was the state attorney wanted to throw the minimum mandatory at me, which was 10 years. In Florida, if you use a gun to commit a felony, it's 10 years. If you fire the gun, it's 20 years. If you actually hurt anybody in any way, shape, or form, it's a life sentence. So they were trying to hit me with the minimum maximum of 10 years, and when I came back from the state hospital, a new state attorney had been assigned to the case, literally new, had been done very little in the state attorney's office. So they were willing to deal. Especially since when I was at the state hospital, they declared that I was in episode at the time of the crime. Which means, of course, that all I had to do was play the insanity card and the whole thing goes away. I spent a year in the state hospital, being observed and all that, and the charge goes away, the arrest goes away. But I didn't want to do that because still so fresh off the streets, even though at 16 months, I knew I'd go back to those pills if anything short of a complete sentence happened. So when they offered me the chance to plead out, and they were open-minded about offers, they asked me, well, what do you think you should do? And so I thought about it. Being as my first crime, I tossed out the offer of 2 years in, 2 years out. So 2 years in prison, 2 years on probation. They shot that down, of course. I scored out to 48 months as far as the minimum sentence goes. So I said, all right, how about 4 years straight time? Straight time meaning no paperwork afterwards, no probation, nothing. And they didn't shoot that one down. They shot me back an offer of 5 years straight time, which I accepted immediately. See, the whole thing is, I was raised Catholic. So when I do something wrong, I not only expect to be punished, I want to be punished. Because I did wrong in the eyes of God. And there's no fooling about that. You know what you did, he knows what you did. So you might as well own up to it. Got lost there. But at any rate, faith got me through it, and God helped by giving me the method by which to get through it. He gave me the strength by realizing that he was a part of getting me off of these pills. The state hospital, that helped, which was also had to be God, because most people would not have gone to the state hospital. They would have just been tried and convicted. Excuse me, a little itch. So, I did my plead out. I went to prison, I think it was December 29th or 30th of 2011. No. Yeah, 2011. And so the first 2 days of the year and the last day of the year, the last year of 2011, then the first 2 days of 2012, I was being processed into prison. That, of course, was an interesting experience, seeing as I'd never been locked up. It's very humiliating in the beginning. They literally strip you down naked. You throw all your clothes in a pile. They bring out a huge pile of boxer shorts, and everybody grab a pair. Get yourself back to where you're supposed to be. It's like a whole day indoctrination into getting you into the system and checking you out and letting you know where you're at, shaving your head, all that stuff. It used to be anyway. I think they don't do that now. And it's a very humbling experience for somebody like me. Which of course furthered, I have allergies, by the way, that's why that's happening. That of course furthered my need for punishment, my guilt, but it also fostered an atmosphere of wanting to change, wanting to grow, wanting to get better. My first actual day in prison, I met a guy. I sat down, I put my stuff down in my cell. I went to the day room, just not knowing what to do, sat down on a bench and was watching TV. And this guy walks up to me and sits down. He's like, "You new? You don't look like you've been in prison before." And I said, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Well, what did you do to get here?" And I told him, about robbing the pharmacy. And he's like, "Well, if you want to get something out of this experience, if you want to get some help," he's like, "you need to sign up for a faith-based and transition program and then work release." Now, the faith-based, these suggestions, of course, were out from a guy who was leaving that night, getting out of prison. So running into him was a major miracle in itself. But, he advised me to go into the faith-based program, which is about self-help. It's not just about religion. You take self-improvement classes and stuff like that. So I was more than eager to sign up for that. And then the transition program is a rehabilitational program. It's drug rehab, drug and alcohol rehab, and life rehab, learning how to function in society again. So I signed up for that, and work release. So after I was finished being processed in prison, which took about months and a half, I got assigned to my first permanent camp, which was up in the Panhandle near Tallahassee. Up there in redneck country, it's a little different. You got to be careful what you say to people, guards wise, at least back then, and how you talk to them. But anyway, I spent 9 months there at that prison, and uneventful for the most part. I learned very quickly how to carry myself in a way to where I didn't look like a victim, I didn't look like an aggressor, I just looked like somebody you didn't want to really try and mess with because you didn't know where I was going to go with it. And that truthfully is who I am. I don't even know where I'm going to go with something when I'm confronted with a problem. So for me to carry that look, people question whether or not they should mess with you. In that case, in prison, that's enough to get you through that, and standing firm in the face of any kind of problem. Within my first week at the actual prison, there was a guy rolling cigarettes on my bunk. Of course, tobacco was not allowed. And I asked somebody about it, and they're like, "Well, you got to say something to him. That's your bunk." So I did. I put on my best game face. I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, man, don't be rolling cigarettes on my bed. I don't want trouble around here." And he's like, "All right, bro, all right." He steps off. Turns out he worked for the warden's office, and he was also one of the guys who gay for the stay kind of thing. He was straight on the outside and whatever goes on the inside. So, for me to stand up to him like that got me a lot of respect. Because I also learned that if you dismiss people after you're done speaking, turn your back and walk away, you speak respectfully, of course, but firmly. if you dismiss them, they tend to think, well, okay, instead of they want to attack or become more aggressive. It's just kind of like they don't know how to handle that, so they leave it alone. So I learned that technique as well, and those got me through. Just being able to stand in somebody's face and without screaming, without even being angry, was enough for people to realize this guy's serious. He's trying to change. He doesn't want trouble, but he will make it if it has to be there. And that got me through it at every prison I transferred to after that, because I spent 9 months at that first prison, and then I got transferred to faith-based. I spent 4 months in faith-based, and I got transferred to the transition program, where I spent 19 months. And in the transition program I spent 19 months, which was longer than normal, but I was able to do that. And then work release, I had 8 months. So realistically speaking, I had less than a year in actual prison, or around a year. And it was God who led me to find all the right answers to get through this without a single problem. I didn't have a fight. Nobody tried to rape. There was one time somebody put their hand on my butt. I didn't even lift my head up. I said, I ain't into that. Get the hell away from me. Never had another problem. When I was sleeping. But anyway, God can get you through a lot of things, and being an addict, I can tell you firsthand, God is the last thing you want to hear about when you're in an active addiction, but it's also the one thing you need to hear about, because God and Christ are the things that will give you strength when you're so far down you don't know where up is. I hit my bottom to do what I did, and I was able to not only sustain myself, but find myself in prison. Finding yourself is a very empowering experience if you don't know. I was very passive before prison, passive to passive aggressive. I learned to be assertive in prison, and that is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I can tell you, to be able to speak your mind and not fear reprisal. Just speak it, and that's that. I've said what I want to say. Now, however you're going to react outside my control, but I've said what I wanted to say. And you stand firm. When somebody wrongs you, you let them know it right away. It feels good not to suppress yourself and your rights, what you feel are your rights. I just can't begin to tell you how much it helps to be able to deal in the day-to-day without so many fears. Being a paranoid schizophrenic, I have a lot of them, but I have the strength, not only through my learning assertiveness, but through God and Christ. I have the strength to deal with the day-to-day, to fight the paranoid delusions, to interact with people who, that's really a big issue for me lately. And that strength, it got me through it, and it's what keeps me clean today off the opiates. I am a medical marijuana patient, but I haven't touched an opiate in 10 years, and I don't plan to. There are moments of self-pity where I think about what it used to feel like to escape, but those are very short-lived, because I remember all the pain that came with it, all the hopelessness, and then of course robbing a pharmacy. I'm lucky. I was able to not only hit bottom and live, but hit bottom and be able to bounce back. What's gotten better in my life, like I said, becoming assertive. I also, because of becoming assertive, embraced something I did when I was young and just didn't have the confidence to keep going, and that was writing. I'm a poet, mostly. Done some self-help, which kind of is basic. I can definitely improve upon it. And I'm lazily working on some novels that I barely ever write. But, the point is, I not only started writing again, but I published books. I self-published through Amazon and other companies that allow you to do that. It doesn't cost you a dime. And you make money, you don't spend money. So I had no risk involved. Now granted, I've only sold a few books a year, every year, but selling any books at all is cool. The whole point was just to publish it, to actually finish something. And I did. I published about 14 books so far, of which I've pulled a few off the shelves to rewrite, and some I've consolidated, some of the books of poetry. But right now you can walk into a Barnes & Noble, or at least on their website, and get my books. I prefer you to buy them on Amazon, though. I get more money there. If you're an ebook reader, I'm also on Kindle. So, you know, it's very... I got something really positive out of it. I accomplished lifelong goal, which was to get published. You know, when I finish the novel, I may try and sell that, but just the fact that I put myself out there, and put myself out there without any fears, without any reservations, gave me such strength. And that strength is what gets me through day to day. I would not have that strength without this whole experience, without having been addicted to the opiates originally to get into all the trouble to get to now. My advice for anyone who's in pain management, or hooked on pain pills, or hooked on street opiates, or hooked on anything, is don't ever lose hope. It feels very hopeless in the pit of addiction, as you know. But the thing to remember is, not only do you have yourself, and believe it or not, you do have yourself. You can rely on yourself. You just have to learn to trust your judgment, which means using judgment you can trust. It starts with one little thing, and you build upon that, you know. You know, the thing, trust people, normal people, to try and help you. Speak to them. Of course, be careful what you say, because some things can end up being used against you with some people. If you have a therapist, it's even better, because they're not going to judge you as much as, say, a psychiatrist would. Find faith wherever you can. If you find that it helps you get through a moment to realize you're not alone with that, because you have faith that you're not alone with that, that's good enough. If you use faith in God or Christ, you know, that is strong too. Just having faith that things can get better. And then, of course, also believing that they will get better someday is a big start. Once you affirm those things in your mind, then you can start moving forward. And you keep building that momentum. Even if you fall backwards, you build that momentum. You build upon what you've already accomplished. You know, that gives you strength, gives you confidence, makes you believe in yourself again, which you should. As an addict, I can tell you, it's very hard not to be self-deprecating, you know, down on myself. And I still, of course, struggle with that, like most people do, but definitely as addicts. But those little inner voices, that inner demons, whatever you want to call them, the doubts, the fears, the loathing, self-loathing, and all that stuff, that's just the addiction talking. You know, you as a person, you don't feel that way about yourself. You just feel hopelessly stuck, and that makes you feel bad. Well, get unstuck. Try these things I'm talking about. They do help, I promise you. Not only myself have I experienced it, but many other addicts who've gotten better just through these same things. It can help to involve yourself in 12-step programs. Not for everybody, but in the beginning, it's nice to be able to build a support system of friends who are sober, who will help reinforce your sobriety, and then eventually maybe teach you how to live a clean life, so you can be clean and sober. Definition of a clean life is living in a way you can be proud of, that's responsible, that embraces moral beliefs, whether they're religious based or not, and just being functional in everyday life, breaking all the bad habits and trying to stay away from them actively. you know. And of course, you know, if you feel you can't handle it on your own, you feel that being on the streets not enough of a way to get clean, there's detox, there's rehabs, there's free help out there. You got to find it. If you've got insurance, you're probably very well off in the addiction department because nowadays insurance loves to pay for rehabs. So I suggest long term, by the way, like 6 to 9 months. The longer you have away from all the frustrations, all the troubles, all the people that you shouldn't be around, and the drugs themselves or alcohol, the longer you're away from them, the easier it is to stay away from them. And then, of course, the thing is, too, you got to change habits of how you think, where you go, who you hang out with, because I can tell you from my own experiences, every time I've relapsed, it's been because I went around old friends or old hangouts and got nostalgic, or smelled a little pot and got, oh well, maybe I can smoke with them and, you know, smoke a little bit and get away with it. And no, it doesn't work that way. Once you let addiction back in the door, it's hard to close it. So keep that in mind. You know, like I said, also you need to challenge any long-held issues. It's a very important point. Always challenge long-held issues. If you've got anxiety, challenge it. If it's social anxiety, put yourself in situations where you have to talk to people sometimes. It doesn't have to be all the time, but put yourself in a position where you're challenging that comfort zone. It gives you strength and confidence, helps you cope with your issues. And just like I said, embrace a lifestyle you can be proud of, because even though we have nothing really right now because my disability got taken away and I can't really work, I have accomplished great things. I found a wife that, oh my God, amazing. I mean, just beyond belief. I've never had such a connection with another person, but that connection would not have happened without all the stuff that happened first with the robbery and finding myself and learning how to love myself. I would not have been attractive to her had I been that same guy I used to be. So the thing you should take away from this is even a severely bad event like robbing somebody can be turned into something good. So once again, I apologize to anyone who was affected by that day, August 21st, 2010. And please, if you're an addict, active or not, stay vigilant in trying to help yourself. Peace.